Today I want to start by telling you a story about four men. These men were given a task, an unusual task, but a task from their employer. They were to go and ask 1,000 people for $100 each to see how much capital they could raise by asking 1,000 people for $100 each. Now, suspend your disbelief for a second at sort of the silliness of this task. That is the task they were set on. And so as each of them was assigned this task, they began to sit down and think about the journey they were about to embark on. Is it going to be a good idea? The first man believed that even if he talked to 1,000 people, no one's going to give him any money. And so he would end up with $0 by the end of it. Now let's think about that for a second. Is this guy right? Is it really true that if you asked 1,000 people for $100 each, none of them would give you any money at all? You'd have nothing? What if none of them was a friend or a family member? Surely they would give you at least $1. Nevertheless, this man did not believe he would get any money at all. The second man had the opposite thought. He would believe he would get $100,000, that each person, all 1,000 of them, would give him $100 and he would get $100,000. Now, from a probability standpoint, this guy is also just as wrong as this guy. This guy thinks he'll get 0%, this guy thinks he gets 100%. Both of them are wrong. It's unrealistic to think that you're going to get 100% response on anything like this. The third guy is interesting though, because he thought that he was only going to get $100. He thought after talking to 1,000 people that only one of them is going to respond and give him $100. Now let's think about this for a second. Is this realistic? In a sense, maybe. But is it the most probable? No. Out of 1,000 people, 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 people are probably going to give you something. And so this might seem realistic, but it is not the most in line with reality. The fourth man, however, he had the most realistic view. He said, I don't know what I'm going to get. It's not going to be 0. It's not going to be 100,000. It's not going to be $100. It'll probably be worth it in the end. But I have no idea how much money I'm going to end up getting. Now let's think for a second here. This is not really so much about the money as it is about the mindset. Let's break down these different mindsets. The first man who said, I'm not going to get anything, he's operating from a mindset of fear. He is afraid of the task. He says the task is too big, too hard, too scary. It's not possible. I won't get anything out of it. And so he has a mindset of fear. The second man who thinks he's only going to have success is operating from a mindset of naivety. He's naive. He thinks that everything's going to go his way all the time, and that's just not how things work. The third guy is a cynic. Americans love cynics because cynics are never disappointed, right? Cynics always told you so. They always seem like they got it right. This guy is cynical. The last man is confident. Not arrogant, not foolish, just confident. Let's think about these different mindsets. How do we think these men are going to fare in their journey as they go out and attempt this task given to them? Well, the first one who's operating out of fear, he's not going to go out and try it at all. And so, he just gives up before he even tries, and therefore, he meets defeat. This person's going to run out with enthusiasm, full steam ahead. But after being told no over and over and over again, he will eventually become disillusioned and give up. And so both the person who's naive and the person who is afraid, they end up in the same spot. They end up with defeat. What about the cynic? The cynic says, sure, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I don't know, but the juice isn't worth the squeeze. I think the entire task is ridiculous and it's too hard and it's not going to work. And so in his negative mindset, his cynicism, he doesn't even try. And all three of these mindsets lead to the same place, defeat. The only person who has any chance of victory is the person with a confident mindset who says, look, I don't think I'm going to fail completely. I don't think I'm going to succeed entirely. I do think the journey is worth it. I don't know what lies ahead, but I'm going to try anyway. He's the only one who's got any shot at having any kind of victory. What's the moral of this story? This is the moral of the story. It never hurts to ask. It never hurts to ask. This person thinks it does hurt to ask. This person thinks, I'm invincible. But then as they do face some rejection, they give up. This person says, oh, it always hurts to ask. But the confident person goes, well, the worst they can say is no, and the best thing they can say to me is yes. It never hurts to ask. Why am I bringing this up? Why are we talking about this? We're not actually talking about money. But as a church, we know that we need to gather people into our initial phase. There's 3 phases in church planning. Phase number 1 is our gathering phase. We're trying to gather people and resources. We need 50 committed team members who give, serve, and attend, and we need about $250,000 of ongoing annual support in order to get this church to work. Why is that important? Why is it important for us to do that? Why can't we just be an evangelism club? Why do we also have to be an organization and have institutional elements? Well, we are all in love with the vision and mission of this church. We want to reach the unchurched for Jesus. We want to plant other churches. We want to see this church grow and reach people for Jesus and bless our city. The only way for that to continue on beyond us is to become an organization. If we are able to actually form an organization, that will actually protect and enhance the mission, increase our reach and increase our scope, and it will carry the mission and vision far into the future, generations after all of us have passed away. So that's why it's essential for us to get that initial phase. The Apostle Paul did the same thing. Whenever he went into a city, he started with the synagogues and then moved to the pagans. We're in the synagogue phase of gathering people who already know the Bible, who are already Christians, who are already excited about the mission. Then we can move on to trying to reach the pagans in McKinney. Once we do all that gathering work, phase 2 begins with us launching public worship, and then it ends with us becoming a self-sustaining, self-governing church with enough money from our offerings, from our operations, and our own vestry. Phase 3 is us reproducing ourselves. Once we have enough excess people and money, we can send out to plant another church in the area or somewhere in the Great Plains. So in order to get to where we all hope to be, phase 1 is very important. And when any one of us thinks about the task of gathering together 50 committed members to our church, it can seem overwhelming. But if all of us work together, asking people to come into this work, then the task seems a lot less daunting because it never hurts to ask. If you love what we're doing, if you love this mission, you would want to see other people also come into this church and also be part of what we're doing. But that only happens if all of us are doing the work of asking. Now, here's the big question. What are you asking? What you, as a member of the church, are asking is not, come join the church, come be a member, here's our rule of life, sign this. That's my job. When it becomes the right time, I will approach that person about becoming an official member of the church. All you're doing is asking them things like this. Hey, our church is having a community dinner coming up. It's going to be a lot of fun, food. It's really casual. Would you just come into our community dinner? Hey, our church is doing an event, a guys' night, a ladies' event. We're doing an Ash Wednesday service. We're doing Stations of the Cross. Whatever it may be. Would you come to that? We're doing an interest meeting coming up. Coffee's on us. Would you come to that? Hey, I'm hosting a dinner party at my house. My pastor's going to be there to talk about our church. Would you come to our dinner party? These are all things that you can ask people to. That's not complicated. that's not intense, that's not high stress, very simple, straightforward asks. Would you come and just check it out? And if enough of us are asking that question, and enough people are coming into the church, eventually we will be able to reach that goal. Because right now, the idea of us having a worship service and doing the work of evangelism, it sounds very daunting. But when we get enough people in there, the load gets lighter. People get sick, they get tired. Not all of us are good at everything, and so the more people we have in the church, initially, it helps us in the future. But we all have to be going about the work of asking your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, random people on the street. Look, I'm going to be giving everybody business cards to talk about our church, and whenever you're in a conversation, just hand it to somebody. It's got a QR code in the back with links to all of our stuff, and it's just like, hey, come check out our church. There's a card to remind you about it. It's just really simple asks. It never hurts to ask. But here's the thing. All of us fall into these various mentalities. If we sit here and go, well, I don't think anyone's actually going to come to this church, you won't even try to ask. You're too afraid to ask. If you're naive and say, everyone wants to come to our church, after you get told no a bunch of times, you're going to give up. And if you're a cynic and say, listen, maybe they want to come to our church, but it's not going to be worth it, you're also going to give up. All these mentalities lead to defeat. This is the only one. Confidence is the only one that actually leads to victory. Now, this thought experiment, this story, is based on probability. It's just a math problem. All of us would say, yeah, if I asked 1,000 people for the same thing, a good number of them have to give it to me. It's probability. But here's the thing. When it comes to planting churches, it's not probability, it's providence. It's not probability, it's providence. I want to read to you from Deuteronomy 31, verses 7 and 8. It says this, Then Moses called to Joshua and said to him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and courageous, for you shall go with this people into the land which the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you shall give it to them as an inheritance. The Lord is the one who goes ahead of you. He will be with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. In this chapter, Moses is about to die. He's handing the reins over to Joshua. They're about to cross over the Jordan into the promised land. You can imagine the people, after having Moses for 40 years, are anxious about going on without him into this land where they know that battle and war are waiting for them, but God's promise is also waiting for them too. And so, what does Moses say to them? He says, don't be afraid, don't be dismayed, because the Lord is going ahead of you, and he is with you. He's preparing the way. And you might say, well, that's in the Old Testament, it doesn't apply to us Christians. Actually, in the rest of the passage, Moses commands everyone to write these things down, and once a year at the Feast of Booths, they're to read them to everybody. The Jews, the sojourner, the Gentile, the foreigner. Everyone is to hear these stories. Why? Because it's a story about how God operates on the regular. He goes ahead of us, prepares the way, and is with us as we march ahead. So in this situation, it's just probability. We can trust in the math. And if we can trust in math, we can trust in the Lord, who goes ahead of us and is preparing the hearts of those you will talk to, preparing those divine appointments, getting things ready so that we could actually have those conversations. The Lord wants this church to be planted. The Lord wants this church to work. He wants us to bless. He wants us to serve. And if we believe that, if we believe the Lord is going ahead of us and he's preparing the way and he's with us, then we should have an even greater confidence than someone who's simply trusting in probability and hard work. It's not just about probability and hard work. It's about the Lord going ahead of us and preparing the way. So what does that mean? That means that all of us should be asking people to check out our church all the time. Everyone we meet, don't be afraid, don't be naive, don't be cynical, just be confident and say, hey, we're doing this thing coming up, would you come to it? That's why we have these events. We don't just do them because I have nothing better to do on a Thursday or Tuesday night. We don't have dinners and events and outings just so we can hang out together. They are opportunities, openings for you to invite someone to check out our church so that it's less stressful than them coming and just sitting in one of our meetings. That can be the opening for them to come and check this out. And it takes people time to decide. So we should not delay. We should work as fast as we can to make sure we don't run out of all of our resources before we have enough people in there to actually be able to get this church going with public services and all the other ministries that we want to do as a team. This work is just as important as going out and doing the evangelism. Because in the process of asking, you might find someone you can evangelize to, but you might also find another Christian whom God is calling to be part of this work. And so I want to leave you with a couple things to think about. First thing is this. Ask yourself, of these three mindsets of defeat, which one do you find yourself falling into the most? And then, here's the next big question. What's the biggest obstacle for you doing more asking? You say, I want to ask people. I want to invite them. What's the biggest obstacle for you personally going out and asking people to come and check out our church? Think about those two questions. And remember, it never hurts to ask.